I'm going to walk through the DD Audio 712FD2 12-inch subwoofers and try to give you a clear picture of whether they're worth the space in your vehicle, the money you're spending, and the amp you'll need to drive them. If you're on the fence about a big room, high-output sub, the biggest mistake you can make is buying a pair that sounds great on paper but ends up needing a whole new electrical setup just to get decent volume. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about what makes a subwoofer like this a real contender in a street car or a competition rig. The 712FD2 is part of DD's 700 series, the newest revision of a line that's been praised for squeezing as much acoustic output as possible out of a given amount of power. The dual 2-ohm configuration means you can wire the pair either in parallel for a 1-ohm load, or in series for a 4-ohm load, giving you flexibility depending on the amp you already have. That flexibility is a big practical advantage because many car amps sit comfortably at 2 ohms per channel, and you can get the sub to see that load without adding a separate bridge or a massive power supply. What you'll feel when you actually install the 712FD2 is that the efficiency boost isn't just a marketing line. DD's design philosophy of maximizing total efficiency translates into a higher sound pressure level for the same wattage compared to a standard 12-inch 4500-watt sub. In a real-world scenario, I've seen owners of a mid-size sedan run a single 1000-watt amp into these subs and still hit that deep, chest-rattling bass that usually requires a 2000-watt setup. That's the kind of practical upside you get when you care about both loudness and power consumption, less strain on your battery, smaller wiring, and a cooler running amp. Now, the flip side. The 712FD2's high power handling is a double-edged sword because it also demands a solid, well-matched power source. If you're running a modest 500-watt amp that's already maxed out on your other speakers, you'll quickly hit distortion or, worse, blow a fuse when you try to push the subs hard. The sub's 2-ohm voice coils can draw a lot of current, especially when you're digging into the lower frequencies for a long-duration boom. In practice, that means you should budget for at least a 1000-watt RMS amp that can stay stable at 1 ohm, and you'll need a good gauge power cable, at least 0 gauge for a 1 ohm setup, plus a reliable battery or capacitor system if you plan on sustained high output. Installation is another area where the real-world experience matters. The 12-inch format fits nicely into many factory enclosures, but the 712FD2 is a bit thicker than a typical sub. That extra depth can be a hidden trade-off if you're trying to drop a sub into a tight trunk or a custom box that was originally designed for a slimmer model. I've seen a few hobbyists end up having to either enlarge the box or add a small mounting rib to keep the cone from hitting the sides of the enclosure. Those are the kinds of adjustments that don't show up in a spec sheet but can add a little extra time and cost to the project. Who should consider these subs? If you're a car audio enthusiast who already runs a high-power amp, or you're building a competition car where every decibel counts, the 712FD2 gives you the leverage to push the bass envelope without inflating your amp size. They also make sense for a daily driver that wants that deep, immersive feel without constantly cranking the volume. Thanks to the efficiency, you can sit in traffic and still hear a respectable low-end punch from a modest amp. On the other hand, if you're just looking for a modest upgrade to a factory system, or you're on a tight budget for both the subs and the power package, these are probably overkill. You'll likely spend more on the amp, wiring, and possibly a custom enclosure than you would on a lower power sub that matches your existing setup. Let's drill into the practical strengths that matter after the box is closed. First, the dual voice coil design gives you that wiring flexibility we talked about, which can be a lifesaver when you're trying to match the sub to an amp that only has a 2-ohm stable mode. Second, the efficiency means lower heat buildup, so the sub stays cooler even during a long bass-heavy playlist. Good news for both your amp's longevity and the sub's own cone life. Third, the 12-inch size still provides enough cone area to move air effectively, so you're not sacrificing the room-filling feel that a larger 15-inch might promise, while keeping the overall system size manageable. On the practical weaknesses side, the biggest one is the demand on your power system. As I mentioned, you can't just drop these into a stock head unit and expect miracles. The current draw at low frequencies can be substantial, which means you need to pay attention to grounding.